Hello and welcome back to my channel. And if this is your first time visiting, welcome. Today's story is entitled 7 in One Blow. So sit back, relax, maybe grab a drink or a snack, and let's begin. Once upon a time, long ago, when giants still roamed the earth and terrified people, there lived a lively young boy named Bertram who worked as a tailor. He was a good tailor and sewed fine gowns and handsome jackets, but he would much rather have been out in the world seeking adventure. All day as he sat stitching in his shop, he dreamed of killing giants, fighting dragons, and rescuing lovely maidens. In his dreams he was always a great hero, of course, and much honored wherever he went. One morning Bertram felt particularly hungry, so before he started his sewing for the day, he cut great slabs of black bread, covered them with creamy butter, and spread a thick layer of honey on top of it all. His snack looked so delicious that he couldn't wait to eat it, but it also looked delicious to the flies hovering outside his window. They swarmed in hungrily and soon covered Bertram's tasty snack completely. He swatted at them furiously with a towel, and with his very first swat, he killed 7 flies at once. Bertram looked down at the 7 dead flies at his feet, and he felt very pleased and proud of himself. 7 in one blow. Not bad at all, he said to himself. Immediately he set to work stitching a sash out of fine black velvet with 7 in one blow embroidered across it. When it was finished, and he put on the handsome sash, Bertram instantly felt like such a hero that he closed up his shop, put a great piece of cheese in his pocket, and set out to look for more adventure. A little bird, who was his friend, tried to discourage him. "Bertram, you're crazy," he twittered. "You only killed flies, but you're acting as if you killed 7 giants." "I did," cried Bertram, almost believing his own lie. "Great black monsters they were, too." "If you don't believe it," he added, "come along with me and you'll see for yourself what a hero I am." The bird hopped in his pocket and Bertram strolled along until he almost stumbled over the foot of an enormous giant. The giant looked down at him, even from its sitting position, and Bertram proudly opened his coat so that his sash could be seen clearly. "I don't believe it, you little midget," laughed the giant. 7 giants in one blow." "Yes," bragged Bertram, "and you may be the 8th, so watch out." "Ha ha!" roared the giant, shaking with laughter. "Do you think I'm afraid of a little weakling like you? You just can't imagine how strong I am." Then he looked around until he found a huge boulder, stuck firmly in the ground. "Now watch!" roared the giant, and with one great hairy hand he picked up the boulder as if it were a pebble and closed his fist tightly around it. The rock shattered into tiny fragments and water poured out. "Pooh, that's nothing. Watch me break my rock." Bertram pulling a big piece of cheese from his pocket and squeezing it tightly. The crumbly cheese seemed to shatter just like the rock, and milky water poured out of it. The giant was so nearsighted that he could not really tell the difference, and therefore he was quite impressed by the little man. "Let's see how high you can throw a stone. I'll go first," the giant said next. Then he threw a stone so high into the air that it almost hit the clouds before it fell back to the ground. "That's nothing. Watch this," Bertram scoffed as he took his friend the bird out of his pocket and whispered to it to fly away. When the nearsighted and dull-witted giant did not see a stone fall to the ground, he thought Bertram had thrown it so high that it landed on the sun. By this time the nearsighted giant was quite convinced that Bertram was a very strong young man, and Bertram was now quite convinced that cunning and trickery were much more useful than strength. He had one last trick to play, which he thought of when the giant asked for help lifting a tremendous tree. "You take the roots," Bertram said to the giant, "and I'll take the branches because they're more difficult to carry." Quickly he hid in a leafy branch, and the poor giant carried the entire tree alone with Bertram in it, and all the way through the forest. "Oh," groaned the giant when he reached the edge of the forest and could finally set the tree down, "I'm tired." "Are you really?" asked Bertram, hopping out of his branch. "I'm fresh as a daisy." Bertram went off feeling very pleased with himself and more of a hero than ever. He was resting on the lawn near the royal palace when the king's high chamberlain happened to pass by. "7 in one blow," he exclaimed when he saw Bertram's sash. "You must be quite a hero, and our king is badly in need of heroes these days. I'll take you to him right away." "I need a hero," cried the king happily as Bertram knelt before him. "It's no fun being a king and ruling your realm anymore. I'm always being threatened by assassins and rebellious subjects and giants." "This great hero I bring you kills 7 giants in one blow," said the chamberlain. "And now I order him to kill 2 more," commanded the king. "There are Fiveton and Sixton, the wickedest of all giants in my kingdom." "I shall obey instantly, sire," said Bertram bravely. But he did not feel quite so brave when he went into the forest and found Fiveton and Sixton sleeping under a huge tree. They were the 2 biggest and most horrible giants he had ever seen. "Don't panic now. Remember you are the famous 7 in one blow," he said to himself. Filling his pockets with little stones, Bertram climbed to the top of the tree. When he was safely hidden away up in the branches, he took careful aim and fired a little pebble at Sixton's nose. The giant woke and roared until the tree shook. "You hit me," he thundered at his brother. "I did not. Go back to sleep," mumbled Fiveton. But just at that moment, a pebble hit him in the mouth, and Fiveton too began to roar with rage. Still unseen, Bertram hurled a few more pebbles, and in a minute the 2 giants were fighting each other furiously. First they kicked and bit and pulled each other's hair. Then they uprooted trees and began to club each other. Finally they broke open each other's skulls, at which point Bertram jumped out of his hiding place and stood victoriously over their dead bodies. Proudly Bertram marched back to the castle to report to the king. "There are 2 dead giants lying in the forest, sire," he announced casually. "You'd better send someone out to clear them away." The king was overjoyed at this news and was very impressed with Bertram. "You've killed my very worst enemies," he cried gracefully. "If you can now subdue the fierce unicorn who's been terrorizing the countryside, I will give you my beautiful daughter as your bride." Now Bertram had dreamed many dreams and invented many stories, but he had never in his wildest fantasies dared to imagine he might have a princess for a wife or a king for a father-in-law. But he did like the idea very much, and so without stopping for a nap or a bite to eat, he set out to conquer the terrible unicorn. Bertram hid behind a tree until he heard a screaming whinny, then a thunderous snort, and then the furious pounding of hooves. In a minute, the fierce unicorn came charging into the clearing with smoke pouring from his nostrils and fire coming from his mouth. Bertram skipped out from behind his tree and danced like a bullfighter in front of the unicorn. The unicorn put his head down and charged like a bull, aiming his single terrible horn directly at Bertram's heart. But before the horn could touch him, Bertram skipped behind the tree once again. The unicorn could not stop himself in time and charged right into the trunk, piercing it through with his horn. The furious animal almost knocked himself senseless and could not pull his horn out from the tree in which it was stuck fast, so Bertram was able to rope and tie him easily. Then he freed the unicorn by cutting the end of its horn off, and led the animal meekly back to the palace, right to the throne room. There Bertram and the unicorn knelt humbly before the king. His Majesty kept his promise, and in 2 days Bertram had a princess for a wife and a king for a father-in-law. One day he would become king himself, and ever after his subjects would enjoy reveling in the retelling of his historic deeds, and even inventing some new ones. Bertram himself never needed to invent another story again. The end. So if you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell for notifications of more stories to come. Bye for now.